Thank you. And it is Thursday, August 15th, 2024. It is 3:02 p.m. We are in the council chambers at 19 Parnell Street. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Resolution.
Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Greater Madawaska calls to order the August 15th, 2024 regular council meeting at 3:02 p.m.
We have a mover. Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That is unanimous, carried. Prior to O Canada, I'd ask anybody with cell phones to make sure they're on vibrate, please. Thank you. Please stand for O Canada. Thank you. Please be seated. As we gather in chambers, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of council and our community that we are meeting on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history. And we are extremely grateful for the many and continued displays of friendship. We also like to thank the generation of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Thank you, Miigwech. Section 2.1, approval of agenda. Resolution, please.
That the agenda of the council meeting of August 15th, 2024 be approved as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Pocky, second by Councillor Levesque. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. 3.1, approval of minutes. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following minutes are approved by council. June 20th, 2024 regular council meeting and August 8th, 2024 public meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Pocky, Councillor Levesque, sorry. And all in favor? Thank you. Acceptance of minutes. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following minutes are accepted by council. May 15th, 2024 Recreation and Culture Committee, May 27th, 2024 Canada Day Committee, June 17th, 2024 Canada Day Committee, and July 11th, 2024 Canada Day Committee.
Okay, do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp. Seconder? Councillor Thompson. All in favor to? Thank you, carried. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof by council? There is none seen. Thank you. We'll be starting off today with delegations. Section 5.1, Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen, if that works for you. Can everybody see that at your end?
It is not up as of yet. It's there now.
Okay, great. Marvelous. Okay, so thank you very much for allowing me this time today. MVCA is Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority is one of 36 conservation authorities across Ontario right now undertaking this kind of study. So it's not just unique in our watershed. So the first thing I wanted to do before I get started is just to recap, because our regulations have gone through a lot of change, what our current core mandate is from the province. and how this fits into that. So conservation authorities across Ontario are to focus on mitigating natural hazards, and you can see the list there of the scope of what the province envisions when they say natural hazards. So, and you'll notice the last one in the list is wetlands. Our legislation recently changed where our focus on wetland is simply for maintenance of their hydrologic value. So thinking of them as big, large stormwater management ponds on the landscape. So it's really looking at their hydrological role within the watershed. Also, where there are municipal drinking water supplies that are either from wells or from surface water intakes, conservation authorities are to work with local municipalities in developing the protection plans, and where requested to assist municipalities in protecting the source of those water supplies. And then lastly, the conservation and management of land. And I've noted their passive recreation. And I'm highlighting that merely because it has funding implications. So our core mandate is to provide passive recreational lands and conservation areas, but it doesn't preclude us offering other types of recreational facilities. So the land strategy that we're working on, the province wants us to develop policy around where we own land, what we're using it for, the programs and services we'll deliver on those lands, how we might augment our current portfolio, but making sure that whatever we're doing in terms of land management and provision of these types of facilities, that we're doing so in an integrated fashion with other levels of government like yourselves, the province, the federal government, and other organizations. So the land strategy is really to focus on why do you own land? How are you using your current assets? How do you intend to, expand or contract that asset portfolio going forward? For what reason? How you're going to manage the costs, et cetera. So just so you have a sense of the type of assets that we own today, we of course own dams. We also own conservation areas. We also own a bunch of other properties that we've acquired over the years. So some were acquired due to historic flooding. The federal government used to offer a program back in the 90s to help people buy out their properties where they were subject to frequent flooding. So on the Clyde River, just south of you, we owned several properties where they were regularly flooded. We also acquire some lands for flood control. So this would be in proximity to our dams. Also, we have some properties that we've been given under the Ontario Land Trust management responsibility. So you'll see in the heading here, it says own, lease, and easements. So we don't necessarily need to own the land for it to be captured in this study. So if we have any sort of legal obligation on a property, it needs to be captured on this. And so on that, the last bullet here, erosion control structures. Back in the 80s, we worked with the former Township of West Carleton to do erosion control on the Ottawa River outside of McLaren's Landing. So I'm just going to go on to the next one. So as I mentioned, we don't actually necessarily own all the property that needs to fall into this. So we only own 4 of our 6 conservation areas. A lot of people don't realize that. And we don't actually operate at all of our conservation areas. So looking in North Frontenac, just southwest of you, we own the conservation area, but it's the township actually that does, week over week maintenance at that site. And in the county of Lanark, we manage their forests. So we don't own the land, but we do the forest management. Our Morris Island and our Carp River conservation areas are actually owned by the City of Ottawa and OPG. So all of these lands in our portfolio need to fall within this study, and we need to work with those partners in discussing the long-term management of those assets. So as we know, this Eastern Ontario has been growing at a fantastic rate, and so it's been putting pressures on the landscape. We hear a lot about people, not able to access enough campgrounds, mountain biking, skiing, hiking spots. So, as the population grows, there is a demand for additional facilities. A lot of people are going on to Crown land, and that's having mixed results in that in some cases those Crown lands are being used at a much more intense rate than historically, and maybe not as properly as we'd like to see. So we've seen some degradation. We're also unfortunately seeing some trespassing on private lands because people aren't cognizant of where Crown land ends and private lands begin. So that's from sort of the recreational tourism perspective, but also, of course, with development comes impacts on the landscape. And so we're seeing, particularly in the lower watershed, in like Mississippi Mills and in West Carleton and Beckwith Townships and the like, that really we just have remnant forests. But we're also seeing that there's increasing conflicts between urban or rural development and existing agricultural activities. So those sorts of conflicts and edge effects on the landscapes where sure there may be some remnant forest or natural area there, but it's being degraded because the edges is being impacted by more intense land use and the like. And then lastly, of course, everybody's increasingly concerned about changes in conditions of surface and groundwater, both for recreational purposes and consumption. So what this drawing here shows is just simply from a population base where we see the greatest demand for potentially future conservation efforts, whether it be conservation purely for conservation purposes or conservation coupled with helping to satisfy and meet growing recreational demand due to a growing population. So what these colors basically say is that from these major nodes, you know, Iron Prior, Stittsville, Carleton Place, and beyond, and I'm cognizant we probably should have done Renfrew as well here, but where are the pressures on the land simply based upon travel times? And we did this analysis to say, you know, what sort of facilities are in those areas today? Is there a need for additional facilities down the road? So just because there's a demand for future, you know, in the future for future additional facilities, it doesn't necessarily mean that MVCA has to be the service delivery agent. You know, municipalities can provide these facilities, the province can, the private sector can. So what this study is trying to do in part is identify what's the niche for MVCA, where are we best positioned to address this gap and growing gap between demands on the landscape and need for conservation. And so that's why we're engaging in these kind of conversations with yourselves and the community more broadly, and what do they see as MVCA's role. So some of the key areas that we need to tackle are that our dams, there's portage routes up and down the Mississippi. Nobody at present has any sort of, you know, management responsibility over portage routes. Do people want us to get back in that business? It used to be part of our mandate back in the 70s, but it hasn't been for years. Do people want us to get involved in active recreation, or is that something we want to leave to other organizations? And then when it comes to our dams, historically, you know, up until present, everybody within the jurisdiction shares in the cost of the management of those dams. Do we need to change our funding model? For example, a couple of our dams only serve the purpose of the supporting the local population in terms of providing recreational water levels. They don't serve a flooding purpose. They don't serve any particular habitat function. So, you know, do we want to change that funding model? And similarly, the museum that we have at our Milliken Tail facility, that's definitely outside our current mandate. And while all 11 municipalities have agreed in the near term to continue supporting it, we do need to look at what the long-term plan is for that museum. So, we're having this discussion with a whole host of people. We have a survey online right now. We're looking to try to collaborate with partners to figure out, you know, how we can work together and on meeting these demands, and recognizing that no matter what we do in terms of providing additional conservation areas or facilities, at the end of the day, most land is going to remain in either Crown or private hands. And then therefore, there's a stewardship opportunity for the Conservation Authority to just make sure people are aware of the resources, how best to manage them as private landowners. So we're doing this consultation over the summer, and we've already started to see a good number of survey results come in by people, that we've been promoting this to. And it's helping us to get a sense of where people's heads are at. So I would encourage you at the municipality to look at the survey questions. It was circulated to staff at all the organizations. And if you have strong feelings on the role that MVCA should be playing going forward, we really very much appreciate understanding that from you. Because during the month of September, I'll be drafting the strategy and tabling it with the board in October, and then that draft strategy will come back out to you for comment before the board finalizes it in December. So I'll stop sharing there and happy to answer any questions people have.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we have any questions from council at this time? No, there's none seen. I have, just for education for people who are here and watching, what do you have within our township of Greater Madawaska?
So it's the very sort of southern corner that falls within our watershed. We don't have any conservation areas within Greater Madawaska. We are consulting with Greater Madawaska because you do have an annual contribution. It's less than $1,000 a year. So it is critical that I make sure that you are engaged in this and have the opportunity to comment. But as a percentage of the overall watershed and of your municipality, it's a very small amount of land.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was mentioned.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions at this time, I thank you for your presentation and have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Move on to 5.2, transitioning the blue box to full producer responsibility. Kathy Green, CIF. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much. Whoops, let me just make sure I have the right screen to share here. Sorry. Okay. There we go. Okay, and are you seeing that full screen with my slide up there?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, thanks very much. So, good afternoon. I just want to start by introducing myself and the Continuous Improvement Fund, which is the CIF. We are a nonprofit serving municipalities across Ontario. The organization is actually funded by municipal blue box recycling dollars. And for most of the last 2 decades, the CIF has worked with municipal staff, providing training on blue box recycling, an annual conference, and a grant program to help communities strengthen their blue box recycling programs. For the last 3 or more years, at the request of municipalities, our focus has shifted to supporting communities through the blue box transition. So that's what I'm here to talk with you about this afternoon. And I understand that Leonard will be presenting his transition report to you after my presentation, so that's really nice timing. Today, I will be talking about municipalities, producers, and pros. The pro, or producer responsibility organization, that I'll be talking about is Circular Materials of Ontario. They are known as CMO, and people do confuse the CIF with CMO because we both have acronyms beginning with C. But I do like to emphasize that we are very separate organizations. The CIF's
Kathy?
role.
Sorry, Kathy, can I
Yes.
interrupt for 1 sec? We did lose your presentation from the screen. So you're
Oh.
not, you have to change, I guess you need to change the pages for us or something, or?
No, I haven't turned yet. Are you still seeing that cover page?
Okay. All right. We're good then.
We're okay. Okay.
We're good again.
I will change the slides in a moment.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say that because we are the CIF and CMO, it's important to distinguish how our roles differ. The CIF's role in the Blue Box transition is helping municipalities prepare for negotiations with the PRO, with Circular Materials of Ontario. We keep an arm's length from your negotiations, but we're here to provide resources and information as you and your staff navigate the details of the Blue Box regulation and weigh the pros and cons of the decisions you're making for your community. I've been working as a consultant with the CIF for 2 years, but before that, I worked for 13 years with municipalities down the road from you in Lanark County, where I live. I've worked in both depot and curbside solid waste and recycling programs. So I really bring a municipal lens to my work that reflects my own experience in rural and relatively isolated communities. So for the agenda today, I'll be presenting information on changes occurring to the Blue Box recycling program. I'm going to walk you through the rationale for change to full producer responsibility and review the regulation. I'll review the timelines and the considerations that councils are making across the province. We will have time for questions at the end as well. So let's get started. Ontario's Blue Box program was reevaluated because the proportion of recyclable material being recovered was dropping while costs continued to rise. It was determined that a regulatory approach was needed where producers of Blue Box materials actually become responsible for recycling the waste generated from their products and packaging. In Ontario, the Blue Box program is transitioning from a model of shared industry funding to one of full producer responsibility, where those producers are responsible for recycling their products and packaging once they are disposed. So you're familiar with the cost sharing model where your staff have completed the data call every year, and based on your costs and the tonnage of material and solid waste reported, you then receive a subsidy from Stewardship Ontario that comes in at about 50% of the municipal costs for the program. So this new Blue Box regulation, which was approved in June of 2022, ensures that producers are fully responsible for the operational and the financial management of the Blue Box recycling program. The regulation sets mandatory and enforceable requirements for Blue Box collection systems. It gives producers choices for resource recovery services in a competitive market. And municipalities may become a service provider under this full producer responsibility framework if you're able to negotiate favorable commercial terms in a contract with the PRO. The final regulation includes provisions such as the establishment of a province-wide common collection system that transitions all of the current municipal programs and expands services to all communities regardless of size. The only exception is in communities in the far north. The regulation includes an enhanced and standardized list of designated materials to be collected and recycled, as well as progressive and enforceable recycling targets. So under the existing regulation, you can see on the left-hand side of the slide that we're collecting from all residential sources. That includes single-family homes, seasonal homes, and multi-residential buildings. But we did not have formal or complete acceptance of schools, long-term care, or retirement homes. When you look at the right-hand side of the slide, you can see that when the new regulation came into effect, sources eligible for collection were expanded. We see that public and private elementary schools and secondary schools, along with long-term care and retirement homes and public spaces, are formally adopted into the program. There are many other sources that communities may currently serve under this under the Blue Box programs. These are known as industrial, commercial, and institutional, or IC&I, and they include businesses, nonprofits, and municipal facilities. These sources were not eligible for subsidy under the old regulation that we're moving away from, and that does not change with transition. The Blue Box program in Ontario has always supported recycling from residential properties only. So these non-eligible sources, as they're termed under the new regulation, were not subsidized under the old regulation and are not funded under the new regulation. So my understanding is that in Greater Madawaska, the ICI and other non-eligible sources can use Blue Box services at your depots. Staff have negotiated a 2.7% rate of non-eligible use in the contract with Circular Materials. If you want to continue providing Blue Box services to these non-eligible sources, as of January 2026, the municipality will actually need to manage, procure, and pay for a separate collection, hauling, and processing of those non-eligible source materials, completely separate from the new Blue Box common collection system that will be run by the pros. During the transition period, you're able to continue commingling those commercial sourced materials with the residential sources, but come 2026, they actually have to be separated if you choose to continue that service. We'll get into that a little bit more. But at this point, I also like to clarify that Blue Box recycling is primarily about consumer packaging. In the new regulation, material is referred to as PPP, packaging, paper products, and packaging-like products. So under the previous regulation, we saw a mixture of materials being recycled in communities, and what you collect can vary from one community to another. It depends very much on where your materials are hauled to and what that MRF is set up to manage. So there were always designated materials like aluminum and steel cans, glass, plastic, metal, and newspaper that all communities needed to accept in their Blue Box program, and communities could add in some other materials like polystyrene and cardboard. Under the new regulation, the difference is that the list of designated recyclable materials will be expanded and it will also be harmonized. In other words, every community across the province will collect exactly the same materials as of January 2026. We will see more programs being accepted into the Blue Box program. And you can see on this slide, some of those items include single-use products used for consumption, like straws and plastic cutlery, as well as single-use products for containment, like plastic bags and aluminum foil. As part of the new regulation, there are strict targets that producers must meet based on their material category. These targets are higher than the previous regulation, and they gradually increase over time. So you can see that they start at the capture rate that was recorded in 2018, but then those targets increase by 2026 and again by 2030. There's a range of compliance up to enforcement with penalties that RPRA, the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority, can action if producers are not meeting those targets. This is an area of the regulation where we saw a lot of improvement compared to the previous one. Now I want to tell you a little bit about producers and pros and what their roles are. So the producers are the brand holders. They are the manufacturers, the importers, or the retailers of products that contain blue box materials. And this includes any company that supplies products into the Ontario market, including online sales. As soon as I bring up these familiar logos, you know who the producers are. These are the companies that, as consumers, we do business with every week. Now, they get to choose a pro to join. The pro is a nonprofit organization that simply represents its member producers and helps them meet their requirements and responsibilities under the new regulation. Each producer decides which pro they want to join. There are currently 3 producer responsibility organizations registered in Ontario, but you really only know about circular materials because they are the big guys. Because they have the majority of producers, they have essentially won the right to be responsible for administering this new blue box program called the Common Collection System. So circular materials is procuring and awarding agreements for collection, hauling, and processing of blue box materials. And they have hired another company, Reverse Logistics Group, to help arrange and manage the logistics of the agreements that they're striking with commercial service providers and municipalities. So it is circular materials that every municipality has to work with. Municipal staff are working with them to transition their local programs. If a community is opting in at transition, it's circular materials that you will sign a contract with to fund the services you deliver or oversee. If a community opts out, it's still circular materials that they're going to work with because the pro is then choosing the service provider for the community and managing the contract. As we start looking at the time frame, you can see that transition started just over a year ago. From July 1st of 2003 through December 31st of 2025, we call that the transition period because producers are assuming responsibility for the transitioning communities on the dates that are contained in the Blue Box transition schedule. But full extended producer responsibility doesn't actually begin until January of 2026, and we call that the post-transition period because by then all the programs have moved over and are being funded by the pro. The post-transition period and the implementation of the full regulation means expansion to non-serviced small communities. Some facilities and public spaces become eligible at that time, and this is also when the harmonized basket of goods will be implemented across the province. In Greater Madawaska, your transition date is July 1st of 2025. What that means is that the contract that your staff are bringing to you this evening runs from your transition date through to the end of 2025. And as of 2026, certain changes will come about. So this decision about opting in and opting out is one of the major considerations for councils. Communities that want to remain involved with the Blue Box program opt in for the transition period until December 31st, 2025. These communities become service providers to the pro, which means signing an agreement to get paid by the pro to manage the Blue Box program that you've been operating already, but you sign a contract and then need to comply with CMO's terms and conditions. Other communities are actually washing their hands of this program, divesting, and that means they are opting out. What happens then is that Circular Materials chooses the service provider, and the municipality then coordinates with the pro administrator and the contracted service provider to ensure a smooth transition. So you're either signing on with the pro to be funded to continue managing the program with the service provider that you currently use, or you opt out and the pro chooses the service provider, and the company they work with then manages the contract on your behalf. There is a competitive RFP process going on now, where Circular Materials is securing service providers in every community across the province. The RFP process may be used to secure a service provider for the transition period if a community is opting out, or it may be securing service providers for the post-transition period starting in 2026. The agreement in the regulation is that programs will not be required to change during that transition period. There will be no change to scheduling or the materials collected in your community. Those changes would be implemented with the implementation of the full producer responsibility details in 2026. Now, communities like Greater Madawaska, whose residents rely on Blue Box services at a depot, need to talk to the pro about what's going to happen post-transition. The pro has indicated a willingness to work with depot-based communities utilizing your established infrastructure. This means there would be continued funding from the pro to support the proportion of municipal overhead at depots that can legitimately be allocated to the Blue Box stream. So these expenses would be a portion of your costs like staffing, hydro and phone, snow plowing, gravel, security, all those overhead expenses that are required to keep the depot operating, and you would allocate a proportion of those to the Blue Box program. It's best for your staff to reach out to Circular Materials directly to talk about what's going to happen in the community post-transition. All of the transition agreements include extension clauses, so the current contract can be extended, but the movement is toward larger contracts for larger catchment areas by the pro. This is one of the elements of full producer responsibility that is intended to contain those rising costs. They issue RFPs for very large areas and then designate a receiving facility and a hauler and a collector for those areas. There is a lot of municipal information about your program that the producers need. This has largely been provided by your staff through transition reports to the RPRA authority who oversees the program. And your staff are working with Circular Materials and their service providers to share this information and ensure a smooth transition at your 3 depots. Whether a community is opting in or opting out, sometimes doing some of each, there is always a benefit of ensuring residents' continued confidence in the Blue Box recycling program, because high participation levels in recycling serves communities well by keeping those designated materials out of your landfill, which ensures that the costs are paid by the producers rather than through the local tax assessment. So that is the end of my formal presentation. I'm very happy to answer questions, or you may prefer to see Leonard's report first. I don't know how you want to go about that, but certainly any questions that arise from the presentation, I would like to respond to.
Thank you, Kathy, for your presentation. Any questions from council? Councillor Thompson.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Greater Madawaska is poised to grow and eventually will get beyond the depot only collection, hopefully, I don't know when, but if we change to a larger collection, how would that work?
Well, it actually becomes the decision of the pro. So what happens is that they are obligated during the transition period to continue operating the service as the municipality has designed it. So currently you work with a depot, and so they will continue that through the end of the transition period. What the regulation calls for post-transition is that the pro matches whatever the garbage collection system is that's in place. So because your residents still take their solid waste to the depot, the pro will be required to continue funding that depot for Blue Box as well. However, should they determine that it would be more efficient and more effective to move to a curbside collection system, that would be their decision, and they would undertake that change.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Thank you, Kathy. I'm not sure whether you can answer this or not, but now this shift is to the producer's responsibility. Have there been any studies done on the increased cost of an item because now the producers have to be responsible for the removal of that packing?
Right, an additional cost, right.
To the consumer.
Right. No studies that I'm in a position to quote. However, what I can tell you is that the experience of full producer responsibility regimes in Europe and in other parts of Canada has been that the capture rate goes up, the participation rate goes up, and importantly, the producers are actually given a financial incentive to use the most sustainable materials that they can in their packaging. We have a lot of research and data that shows it is the nature of the more complicated kinds of the more complicated kinds of packaging that is driving up the cost of recycling. Those costs have been borne by municipalities who have been obligated to provide this service. But with the cost coming back to the producers, we look for that financial incentive for them to begin using more easily recyclable materials for which there is a robust global market. An example I can give of that is whereas we used to get every digital device come packaged in the styrofoam, you're now more likely to see them in a molded cardboard because there's always a strong global market for cardboard and it can always be recycled well. So I'm not really able to respond to that question about how it might affect retail prices, but we do have evidence that show that the recycling program becomes more sustainable and a more effective means of diverting those materials from the landfills.
Okay, thank you. And circular materials, the board of directors of circular materials are all of the producers.
No, the producers are members of the organization. So I'm not sure that they would also sit on the board.
Okay, I just thought it was quite strange that the pros are the circular materials are also the people that are producing too. So, okay, thank you.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions from council? No. I thank you for your time. Take care.
Thank you. Okay. I'd like to stay on to hear Leonard's report if that's okay with everybody.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Moving on to 6.1, bylaw 44-2024, Blue Box Depot Services Agreement with Circular Materials. Resolution, please.
That the Township of Greater Madawaska approves bylaw 44-2024, being a bylaw to enter into a depot collection statement of work with circular materials to continue to provide Blue Box services at the Township depots, including promotion and education, and provide service to non-eligible sources for the period of July 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025, based on the terms described in this report, and that council authorize the CAO to execute the depot collections SLW with circular materials.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Tripp. Background, please, Leonard.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mayor Weir. So this started, like Kathy said, back in
2022. And we've been back and forth with Circle Materials to come with a negotiation for us to run the depot and do the hauling for this first 6 months of the transition till January of 2026. So as you come down on the chart, you can see where we come up with costs. So Circle Materials has come up with the formula we gave them with all our data call information and all the formulas they use to come up with what they would pay us per month. So as you get to the end of it, from what we were getting paid before from the Blue Box, we were making, it was costing the residents $3,777 per month. With this new 6 months transition, it would now be costing the ratepayers $1,344 a month. That's what the difference would be between the Blue Box program we had before to going with the producers. So I would recommend that we opt in with Circle Materials under their contract to run the depot and do the hauling of the materials for the transition period from July 1st to December 30th of 2025. Due to the fact that for the service for our residents, just so we have our regular hauling of our bins, we're not getting the contractors where we might end up having bins overflowed or having stuff delayed. And then once we come into the transition period's over, then we will look at what the producers want to do next. Are they going to want to haul our materials, or are they going to allow us to keep hauling them and paying us to do that? So my recommendation is that we opt in for the 6 month contract with Circle Materials. Okay. Thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. This is all very interesting. How will this affect our day-to-day operations? Will we need more bins because we'll now be collecting styrofoam? And will it change staffing levels because hopefully there'll be more collected?
At this time, I can't really answer that question until the transition period's over. As of now, we're going to operate as we normally have, right through till the end of 2025. And then once the producers come back, they will then state what materials they want to accept, and that will be when we'll have to make a decision on a new contract at that time. Thank you. Any other questions from council? There are none seen. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you, Leonard. We will now move on to 7.1, building permit report information item. Is this Chris? I think you're taking the lead on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This report's just to update council of all the building and septic permits that have been issued to the end of July of this year. And it also shows the revenues collected for the building permits and the lot development charges to the end of the same period.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from council? If you had time to review it, I assume. Thank you. Thanks for the report. We'll now move on to 7.2. 7.2 is Calabogie Motorsport Class 4A area designation. Resolution, please.
That council designate a portion of Calabogie Motorsports Park property as a Class 4 area, and that council approve bylaw 42-2024, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 28-2024, being a zoning bylaw amendment related to the consent application B11-23-1, B12-23-2, and B12-23-3.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Levesque. Background, please.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here in the flesh.
Kent, good to see you not on the TV.
That's right. I'm real. So what we have here today is there's a couple of recommendations, as Renee had pointed out. One is to designate a portion of the Motorsports Park property as a Class 4 area, and I'll get into that. And then the other is to amend a zoning bylaw amendment that was previously passed by council in December. So what this stems from is that the applicant, Calabogie Motorsports Park, approached us with they're potentially looking at developing a portion of the property near where those 3 consents were conditionally approved. would be a 10-lot subdivision that they're currently exploring right now. As part of that, they undertook an update to the noise study that was undertaken in support of the 3 severances. When those severances were conditionally approved, the recommendations of the noise study, in order to implement those, a zoning bylaw amendment was passed, and in that amendment, it included a requirement for a development agreement. The development agreement would be registered on title on each lot that essentially has warning clauses, requires some small building measures to be put in place, basically like double pane windows, that sort of thing, central air, just as noise mitigation. And so now that Calabogie Motorsports Park is looking at this additional development, the updated noise study recommended that the area be redesignated as a Class 4 area under the MECP guidelines. And what that means is that the Class 2 area, which is sort of the default classification for rural noise sensitive receptors, it has a decibel level limit on it. The Class 4 area is a slightly higher decibel limit. I believe it's 10 decibels higher than the Class 2 area. And that just essentially means that there's an understood level of noise that's higher than a typical rural area. And of course, being in close proximity to the park, it makes sense that development or sensitive land uses that occur there would expect to have higher levels of noise. Now, in order to classify that area as a Class 4 area, council of the local municipality has to provide a resolution stating so. So what you have before you today is a request from the applicants for council to support that classification specifically for that area. What that also entails is that the zoning bylaw that was originally passed needs to be updated because the noise bylaw has been updated, or pardon me, the noise study has been updated, and the noise study is specifically referenced with the date on the zoning bylaw. So that's the second part of the recommendation that we have, or that you have before you today. I believe that the applicant is here today, and then Catherine Curry from JP2G is also here via Zoom. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions, concerns, discussion items from council? Councillor Thompson.
So this is just for the properties that there will be built within the motorsport park, right? If other properties are built nearby, will that be part of the consideration?
Through the chair, yes, just for the property where the motorsports park is. So in your agenda package there, I believe that there was the map that was included, and there's a little corner part of the property where they have the 3 severances. Across from that is the area that they're exploring, the potential subdivision. It would just be that area that would be classified under the Class 4.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? No, and I thank you for this, and I likened it to moving in beside an airport. You're going to expect planes and noise above you, or for myself, moving beside a golf course and not having a reasonable expectation of having golf balls in my yard. So when you're purchasing by a racetrack, you're probably a race enthusiast and really don't mind the noise. Thank you. Councillor Levesque.
Just couple of questions. There was a kind of a soft word about recommendation versus required, but once the development agreement comes into play, then the township becomes implicated in all of this. If the person who's building doesn't comply with the requirements that are set forth in the I guess the covenants, right?
Yeah, through the chair, essentially, yes, the applicant, or pardon me, the municipality would be responsible for enforcing that development agreement.
So would that be done through our chief building officer then, or would that be done through who? Like, how would that actually be executed?
Essentially, yes, it would be executed by planning in conjunction with building. So planning reviews site plans. So some of the stipulations in the zoning bylaw for that property, for instance, have specific requirements in terms of how structures are to be constructed on the lands. That would be reviewed in conjunction with, say, a building permit application to ensure that's in line with the zoning of the property.
Okay. Because I think in all the reading that I did, it seemed to be that it was kind of loose on the actual requirements and when they would have to be met. So I would envision this type of thing would be right before occupancy permit type of stage, or throughout, but also the last step would be occupancy. Like they wouldn't be able to occupy that without those requirements being met.
Yes, I would, through the chair, I would add that they are building related requirements.
Okay.
Right, so that would be.
So I could just add to that. So as Kristen said, whenever the applicant would bring in a building permit, planning will review it. And if there's a zoning, if there's something through zoning that is flagged for that certain property, then it would trigger me to review, the building, their application of, are they going to meet now these requirements if there's covenants or whatever on these certain properties?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? No? Thank you. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. We will now move on to 7.3, bylaw 39-2024, development agreement, Track Corp Canada, Inc. Resolution, please.
The council approves bylaw 39-2024 to enter into a development agreement in accordance with section 51(26) and section 53(12) of the Planning Act with Track Corp Canada, Inc.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Levesque. Background, please.
Thank you. So this is essentially in line with what we just discussed. So this is the development agreement, which is the condition of consent related to the current 3 approved severed lots. So essentially a part of that decision was that the development agreement was a condition of consent. So the development agreement is essentially before us now. And this development agreement is required to be registered on title to each individual lot. So when there is a purchaser of one of the lots, they will also receive this development agreement as part of that purchase. And this development agreement essentially is to implement the recommendations that were contained in section 5.2 of the updated noise study that was updated just recently, which includes the class 4 recommendations.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? There are none seen. All in favor? And that is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. And let's move on to 7.4, sound monitoring, Calabogie Motorsports Park. Resolution, please.
The council repeal policy 3-14, special events sound monitoring at Calabogie Motorsports Park, and policy 3-15, daily sound monitoring at Calabogie Motorsports Park.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Tripp. Background, please.
So the intent of this resolution is to repeal 2 policies relating to sound monitoring through staffing within the township. So currently, we have some sound monitoring completed through the township. We have a complaints line that's been up and running since CMP has been developed. And since this time, CMP does perform their own sound monitoring in the same instances. Sometimes they meet up to each other. It's a bit of a doubling of work. And although it's cost recovery and it costs the company up to $4,300 a year, it is doubling of work and it takes staff time. So the intent here is to repeal the policies. The township's noise bylaw does speak to sound monitoring for the park, so it would be still covered through there. However, it would remove the requirement for the township to be completing the monitoring at each event. With that said, also, if the township were to want to complete sound monitoring or enforce, this would all be done through the noise bylaw and by law enforcement.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? Councillor Thompson?
Yes. I'm curious about the noise bylaw. Do we have a noise?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and does it cover this?
It specifically has a large section relating to the motorsport park. I do believe that the noise bylaw was put into place when the motorsports park came into play. So the driver to the noise bylaw is the motorsports park. So you have that plus you have these extra policies.
So if there's no, are we saying there's no monitoring except for events?
Sorry, the CMP completes their own noise monitoring. And then we receive reports regularly regarding this monitoring and ensuring it stays within the requirements. So this is already happening.
Okay.
And we were also still completing it. And then, so we would have staffing, and then we have an actual line for complaints that's also open that receives this complaint. So we can do it through our current zoning bylaw, and then they would still complete their sound monitoring.
Oh, okay. So if somebody does complain, we still have something to go back up, say, well, it isn't loud.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No, I will note too that 2021, there were 4 complaints. 2022, there was 2. And 2023, there was 1. So I think the self-monitoring done by the track, we get copies of it anyways. So I think it's the redundancy and staff time it's well warranted to move these. Any other questions, council? No? All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. We will now move on to 7.5. Resolution, please.
That council approve bylaw 38-2024, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 28-2024 as amended to rezone part of the lands located in part of Lot 19, Concession 1, Geographic Township of Blythefield, from highway commercial to rural, to permit the construction of a residential dwelling supported by private servicing on the subject's land.
Thank you. Who's giving us background on this one? Kristen. Oh, sorry, we need one mover first, Kristen. My apologies. Councillor Tripp and Councillor Popke to second. No, Kristen, background, please.
So this zoning bylaw amendment is in regards to lands known municipally as 575 Kennedy Road. The lands are currently zoned highway commercial under our current township zoning bylaw, and this application proposes to rezone the lands to rural to permit essentially a dwelling supported by private servicing. We did hold a public meeting last week on Thursday, August 8th. There were no comments received. It's essentially just a simple rezoning. It meets the site plan that the applicants have provided. There's no setback reductions or anything like that. It meets all the provisions of the township zoning bylaw, so we're just essentially simply rezoning from highway commercial to rural.
Thank you. Any questions from council? There are none seen. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. Moving on to 7.6, bylaw 2024 and bylaw 41-2024, Granite Village Subdivision Agreement. Resolution, please.
That council approve bylaw 40-2024 West Side and bylaw 41-2024 East Side, being bylaws to authorize the execution of an agreement between Calabogie Land Development, Inc. and the Corporation of the Township of Greater Madawaska.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Levesque. Background, please.
So these bylaws are simply just to delegate the signing authority of these subdivision agreements. We've attached the draft subdivision agreement to the agenda package. They impact both sides of the Granite Village subdivision, so the east and west. And this is essentially sort of the beginning of the end in terms of clearing conditions. So that's pretty much it. If council has any questions about the agreement or the process, happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? There are none seen. All in favor? So carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to information items. 7.1, local OP public engagement project launch. Information item is being, Kent, is you leading this one?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is just the introduction, I guess, for the local OP policy process that we had discussed earlier this summer. As council is aware, it was recommended that we move forward with the public consultation component of looking into establishing local OP policies.
I'm just going to interrupt for 1 sec. Just for anybody watching, official plan.
Oh,
OP,
pardon me.
so that people have an understanding.
Official plan, yes. So the official plan, the Renfrew County official plan, of course. And so at this point, we've begun work in earnest. We've, with your staff, have put together surveys that will be going out to the public and council as well. So specific to council and specific to the public. And as I've noted in the report, we're sort of moving into phase 2, and it's all kind of going at the same time concurrently. While the surveys are going, we're also going to be conducting public consultation sessions in September. There's an open house and workshop that'll take place that we've penciled in for September 17th, followed by a meeting with stakeholders and agencies. So those members of community groups, agencies like whether it's a conservation authority or a provincial agency or things like that. And then after that consultation process has taken place, we look at the results, we examine the background information, including older official plans. I think we've noted in here, and there's been a lot of discussion about the former hamlets in the township. So a lot of that is done at the same time. And what comes from that is a summary report that's provided to council. We have in here in November, we're hoping for early November, that will be presented to council that will provide the options for amending the Renfrew County OP, or perhaps not amending the county OP, but providing several options for how to go about that based on the consultation, based on our recommendations. So we're trying to do it as quickly as we can, but we want to ensure that we get as much feedback from the public as possible, and of course there'll be feedback from council. So that's it in terms of the kickoff, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Thompson.
I have a number of questions. I don't know if you want me to go through them all at once, or one at a time, and then other councillors have a chance to talk.
Why don't we start with one at a time, and then we'll see how far we go.
Okay, well, let's start with the first one. I'm curious about, will anything change in the planning process we have now as far as county staff's authority to authorize new subdivisions if we change this?
No, through the chair, no.
No, okay. So we won't need extra staff. This won't be our own plan, right?
No, so depends on what you mean by your own plan, right? So the approval, this doesn't change the approval authority regime, right? So the county is still responsible for approving subdivisions, still responsible for approving OPAs, and you're still responsible for approving zoning and the committee of adjustment applications. So it doesn't change that. What it does do is that if you do have a local OP policy or a secondary plan, for instance, you can have policies that are specific to your township that have, that provide maybe higher standards for development, higher standards for requiring, certain items with an application or certain things with an application or actually identify certain areas of the township that you may want to see more development or less development. So it does provide that sort of control. And those policies have to be followed by the approval authority. So the county can't ignore those policies when they do make their decisions.
Okay. But one, so far so good. When reviewing the hamlet mapping in phase 2 of this plan, which is pretty much ongoing, will historical maps be used, or will newer mapping that was published by Renfrew County GIS Department, will that be used that show existing settlement boundaries? But I remember showing you the one. Will that one be used?
We'll be looking at all mapping.
All maps.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So that's easy too. When you're examining the potential to guide development to certain areas of the township, will you be taking into consideration that the villages can't densify as long as all new builds continue to depend on private wells and septic systems?
Well, I'm not sure of the question. Like,
Then I'll continue. There seems to be a perception that communal water and wastewater systems are prohibitively expensive. I heard that in a number of results. It's too expensive, so we'll just build on greenfield properties. Calabogie Peaks Resort is in the process of expanding its systems, and it's proof that they make sense if you want densification. And it's also my understanding that it's less expensive for developers to install modular systems, say for, I don't know what the number is, like say 100 occupants or dwellings, than it is to have individual septic systems. And it kind of leads into how do we create the kind of walkable communities where we can have medical centers unless we have municipal water and wastewater.
So the question is essentially, how do we encourage communal systems, or how do we encourage higher up in terms of the hierarchy of servicing, going beyond just private individual systems? It all depends, I guess, is the answer. I think there's, like, the PPS certainly does that when it has its servicing hierarchy, where it goes from municipal and down to communal and to private.
That's the provincial policy statement.
Right, pardon me.
Yeah.
Provincial policy statement. So we have to follow that. So it's right there, we're already following that hierarchy. Now, in terms of where that's triggered and where it's required, in which instance, we can explore that. I don't know if I necessarily have an answer for how to do that yet.
But we can, through this official plan, we can designate that development should be dense.
Well, yeah, I mean, we cannot, absolutely. I don't want to get into how and what. I mean, we want to, but these are certainly things that we would take into consideration. Absolutely.
Oh, okay, good.
Yep.
Because I think that's important, because most of the provincial policy statement is all talking about don't build out because of your existing wastewater systems. It's too expensive to
Correct.
continue the pipe. But
That's
there's
right.
really nothing about how do you stop that from happening when you don't have any pipes.
Well, that's right.
And that's
Yeah.
our conundrum if we're going to grow and densify. Okay. The public workshops, what kind of information are you hoping to get from the public?
Well, the public should inform us in terms of what they want to see the community look like in 20 years, essentially, right? So that's the most basic question, right? We can give sort of a standard boilerplate as to this is what we typically do everywhere, but we do want to know what is important to the community, right? So what public spaces are important to the community, what resources, whether they're natural or cultural or things like that, where are these important places, and how do we protect them? How do we make them better? And what type of community do you want to see in terms of its growth? Do you want more recreational opportunities? Do you want more better roads, better sidewalks, better, that sort of thing? So we do want to get all that information. And the stakeholders are important because they're the ones that deal with either the document all the time, whether it's a zoning bylaw or like a planning document, whether it's a zoning bylaw or the OP itself, official plan. And they're the ones typically involved in some way in the planning process at some point. And so we'd like to know what they think as well. That a lot of the public feedback is going to inform that. Yeah.
Okay, so will the public be given an awareness of, those things that they want? How planning will affect and where we place the communities, how it'll affect the outcomes that they're looking for?
In any of these sessions, we try to be as informative of the processes as possible, because like right away, I'm spewing jargon, right?
Yeah.
It can be a complex thing that nobody really understands, and they may not understand what's going on. So we try to be very informative, educational. So yeah, the part of that is saying, you want to have this is how we can help that happen. We can't be the genie in the bottle, but we can at least sort of guide the community in that direction with this document.
So when they say, if they say we want development, because the survey I did so far had, where would you like to see development happen?
Right.
But if development goes everywhere, then the other things they want to see happen, like, walkable communities with, shops nearby and cafes, they need to understand how the placement.
Yeah, it's tricky, because you've got to balance. You have to do balancing act. You don't want to guide them in a certain direction, but you also want them to understand that there's cause and effect. I think for the most part, a lot of the people who are filling them out have that. Most of them have the sophistication to understand that. Some of them might not, but that's what we try to do to parse through it and ensure we get the answers that we need.
Almost done. Sorry.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. I think Councillor Tripp has a supplemental to what you've brought up.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm encouraged with what I'm hearing. I think this is going to be a living process through the consultation in the building, and the OP is something that will develop over the days, weeks, and months ahead of us. We've had very good success in open houses, so to your comment about filling out the survey, which is two-dimensional, it gets the basic information. But looking at the open houses that are being planned and for the face-to-face interaction and the sticky notes that we had on the boards through both the strat plan and other open houses we've had unprecedented input from the residents, so it's encouraging. And I think this is really just laying out the plan forward, not the details how to. I think we need to be at a 50,000 foot view in terms of where we're going. The details will come in the coming weeks and months. As the two-dimensional survey results come in, we get the open house, we have the interaction, we hear, and then we build something that is a plan that will sit with county. So they're still going to be bound by the provincial plan, their plan, but this will, as you said at the beginning, identify those things that are really important to us and they're for their consideration. So their plan may say this, we're carving out an area because of our uniqueness to say, in this situation, we want to have our plan sit on top of yours. But it's a living, this is really just the intro to council to say this is what's coming.
Correct.
The how and the discussions, I think, will come. Anyway, I just want to interject on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns at this time? Councillor Thompson.
Just one more. Will Renfrew County planners and the county council, will they be given whatever rationale we've come up with for why we want something different than what they already have?
Yes. So you have to think of it like it's an application, a planning application that you see come across, like for an official plan amendment. It's just exactly the same, except the municipality is the applicant. So we have to write a justification as to why these policies conform to their policies and that they make sense. We have to be able to defend them. Because if we go to the tribunal, we have to defend it. We have to have some sort of basis for why it works. So yeah, and we're prepared to do that when we get to that point, which, at the end of this process, this portion, that's when we're going to be recommending, here are your options for moving forward with actually putting an amendment together.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you. As this is an information item, we do not need to take a vote on it, but we will move on to 7.8, short-term accommodations licensing update information. Renee?
This is simply a memo to provide an update to council and residents regarding the short-term accommodation bylaw or licensing bylaw. As you can see, we have completed with Granicus, the third-party provider, the address identification, and we are moving forward with the mobile permitting, which is basically the application system or the online portal for applications. So I stated here we'd be assigned a project manager by September, but we have been assigned one, and I'm meeting next week with them to start the process. I do identify that there may be an adjustment required if there's a delay. The adjustment's intended not for licensing. As soon as the portal's ready, we will be starting to license. So the intent is to enforce non-licenses by January 1st, 2025. So as we're processing licensing, we wouldn't be penalizing STA owners for not having them as we're still processing those applications. So we do intend over the next month to have an update on when the date will be for where we accept applications. We are already receiving calls, and STA owners are attending the office to make sure they have all their information. The short-term accommodation, we have a short-term accommodation page on our website, which provides a guide. So they've been working towards that because they are booking into next year, and they want to make sure they have a license to do so. And that is all.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I now know we have a noise bylaw for the motorsport park, right? But as far as I know, we don't have a noise bylaw. The STA, the short-term accommodation, what we heard from the public was noise is an issue. So until we can get all this in place, are we working on a noise bylaw?
We have a noise bylaw that's intended for noise. So there's a full noise bylaw. We are intending on adjusting it or reviewing it, but there is a noise bylaw in place. We have encouraged short-term accommodation owners, as this is coming into play, because we will have a hotline related to this, to use our current bylaw enforcement because there are ways for bylaw enforcement to be able to enforce noise restrictions, and that's underway. So I think there's been a misconception of us not having a noise bylaw, and bylaw enforcement has been working with SCA owners to provide the avenues to be able to report properly, and then they're able to enforce.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Thank you. Information item only. 7.9, Peaks Village drainage easement expropriation update. Renee, please.
So as council is aware, you had approved to proceed with the expropriation as September 21st, 2023. I wanted to provide an update on this process. It's very lengthy. It's still underway, and it may be underway for quite some time after this. The expropriation packages were sent to the residents, and for mortgage holders, them also. Those are the applications or the packages that are being delayed a bit at this point because both the homeowners and the mortgage holders have to sign to be able to close off the expropriation. So we're still working through that, and the solicitor has mentioned that it could take a year, it could take more. With that said, when it comes to the intent here is to complete the drainage and then eventually complete some work on the roads to upgrade the roads. This requires funding, and there are properties in escrow that need to be considered. We are working through the file to ensure all the steps have been followed properly to be able to complete the sale and usage of this land to be able to fund these projects. We will, over the next few months, provide another update to council on how to proceed with that.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? Nothing. Thank you, Renee. We will now move on to section 8, committees and boards. Apparently Chris is leaving before this one, okay. We'll move on to 8.1, 2024 Canada Day Committee Final Report. Jane Weir, Chair. Just sit.
Maybe they'd like to leave too.
Oh, if they, do you guys want to leave? You certainly can.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Jane, it's nothing personal, but they're all leaving. I think Kristen's going. See ya.
No, nobody wants to hear me.
All right.
Oh, now we're going to be alone.
Hey, thanks. Wow. Thought you were coming back, Chris, but just need your hat. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jane, for clearing out the room for us. Candidate, make sure your mic's on, and if you'd like to proceed, thanks.
Okay, just the purpose of this memo is to inform the council of the successes, the challenges, and the financial implications of the 2024 Canada Day events, as per the 2024 Canada Day Committee terms of reference. There are 5 events held within the township. One, Madawaska Hall, they combined it with their 70th anniversary. 2, 5-meter run in Matchewan. 3, the Pancake Breakfast in Calabogie. 4, DACA Centre Canada Day. And 5, Calabogie Canada Day. Matchewan Hall held their event on Saturday, and the rain resulted in changes to the scheduled activities, but however, they had great attendance and a very successful day. The Canada Day Committee assisted with organizing some games, promoting the event through advertising and assisting with fundraising. The township has also assisted with $1,000 in funding. The organizer of the 5K fun run reported the event was a success and plans to continue with the event next year, which is great news. The event was organized by volunteers. However, they did receive support from the Township Roads Department, Fire Department, office staff, and Canada Day Committee. Can't thank Leonard for his help there. The annual Pancake Breakfast was held in Calabogie, was organized by the Greater Madawaska Public Library and Learning Center. They reported that this is their largest fundraising activity, and it was a great success. The success of this fundraising endeavor assists with the delivery of community programming, and the Canada Day Committee was not involved in this event. However, the event was included in our advertising and promotion materials. DACA Centre held a successful event again this year. The township assisted with $1,000 in funding and promotion through advertising. The Calabogie Day event was organized and managed by the Canada Day Committee with the assistance and involvement of several groups. The event was a success. Attendance was noticeably higher than in previous years, with an estimated count of 2,000 attendees. The addition of the Lumberjack Show was well received. Overall, the event was successful, and many positive comments have been received. Areas of improvement to be considered for 2025 are more assistance for persons with mobility issues, how to alleviate the volunteer shortage issue, and creation of a basic emergency response plan. To let you know the financial implications for the Canada Day 2024, Matchewan Hall, $1,000, DACA, $1,000, Calabogie events, $11,263. Fundraising, sponsorship, donations, and grants for the Calabogie event amounted to $22,235,000. I personally would like to thank Rob Tripp for his contributions. He made things easy for us. And Robin back there, thank you. You are a rock star, and we couldn't do this without her support. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concern, discussion items from council? Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Jane. I just wanted to also send the entire committee's appreciation and councils to you for your leadership in this year. It was a remarkable committee. It was an incredible journey. We had new people. They took on activities. They ran the show. So it was a very successful event. There were a lot of new things that we tried. We won't get into the details about our MC, but we had our deputy mayor MC in Calabogie, which turned into be a thing that people will discuss for quite a long time, I think. But thanks to all the people that helped, and to our sponsors. We raised, the only thing from this side of the table that I would like to suggest as councillor, the council rep to the committee, is when we get into budget deliberations for next year, I would like to encourage that we increase the 2 satellite grants of $1,000 to $1,500 if in our budget discussions we can adapt, because we have the ability here clearly to fundraise. It's a little harder when we get into those smaller communities. I'm not asking for money, I'm just asking that we think about it when we get into the discussions. But thank you, Jane.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Hi, I just want to say how wonderful I think it is. The candidate committee is one committee for the whole township, including Madawaska. I know. Yeah, it is fantastic because it was always 3 isolated events, and there was always a little bit of jealousy just because there are more people here in Calabogie. What, no fair, no fair. But it really does give that spirit of the whole township celebrating at the same time. And yeah, what a great group. And really pulled it off. This is the first time I ever went to Calabogie. It's the first time I ever went, and I was drawn by the activities. It's not just walking around vendors and then fireworks, or a pancake breakfast, way too early for me. The log rolling and the other things going on. It was really fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councilor Popke.
I'll just say that I haven't been to Calabogie in a long time either, but I talked to many people on the streets, and they say it's come a long way from what it used to be. So thanks for making that all happen.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Levesque.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you to the committee and everybody who's behind the scenes who did so much to make it happen, and throughout the township, as you pointed out. Just a question, I guess, directing to you guys. So you indicated that the cost of the Calabogie event was about $11,000, and through sponsorship and so on, we have looks to me like we have about $11K surplus. Is that right? Am I reading that properly? We spent that Okay. Okay. So the $11,000 for the Calabogie event, what is that? Is that the cost?
Yeah.
It's a net cost.
Net cost.
The net cost. Okay.
And then the intent here is, I believe, to show the net costs, and then at the bottom it shows how much fundraising and how much funds ever brought into play, but
Okay.
they're not, they look close, but they're not the same.
Sorry,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. I just want to thank everybody that was on that Canada Day committee. The only event I was not able to go to was the pancake breakfast, because I was up in that Madawaska area. I went up there originally to just cheer people on, but then there were a lot of younger people that wanted to beat the mayor in a 1K race, and they were just even the 3-year-old was way too fast for me. But that was great. And then over at DACA Center, everybody gathering. They had the popcorn was flowing like mad over there, and everybody had a great time. And then getting back down to Calabogie, it was wonderful seeing so many people. We had some great vendors and some new vendors. Kudos to our fire department for their display of the extrication from a vehicle. That was extremely popular, and once again, I mean, the firemen with the kids, the kids just get attracted to the trucks and the fire crew, so it was a great display. All around, it was just a wonderful weekend, so I thank everybody for coming out to it, and yeah, and then the biggest question is, what are you going to do to up it next year? Anyways, I'll leave that till the next committee, but thank you once again, and if there's no further questions. Yes, and I did notice, just for people watching, that we have already posted for the 2025 Canada Day volunteers. So you want to get out there and help, get on it. All right, thank you. If there's no more questions, thank you, Jane. And you're free to leave too. Thank you. We'll now move on to 8.2, Recreation and Culture Committee. Councillor Levesque.
Thank you. This is just a verbal update, some high-level things that happened during the summer. So our soccer program concluded. There were 22 kids registered. It was the organized aspect of it was mostly unorganized, simply because of the age groups involved and so on, and that was anticipated. We plan to survey the families who participated to get a sense of how did it go for them and what things we could do differently for next year. There's also a potential soccer camp which would be different or separate from the program itself, so that we're potentially looking at as well. So like some people might recognize it as soccer camp, if you will. The day camp, we had 2 back-to-back weeks. One was a sports camp, and there were 10 kids that participated in that, and the second was the art camp with 6 participants. It was challenging, I think, because they were back-to-back, so there's certainly some learnings from what happened during the summer. We also are planning to do a survey for that as well to get a sense of what worked and what didn't. Just one kind of note that there was only one child from Calabogie School that was registered. The rest were from Renfrew and other areas, and cottagers. So that was kind of interesting to learn. There were some other things going on at the same time as well, that there were some dog walkers, and there was an overnight camper that was hanging around, so that was an interesting aspect to the whole thing. Rebecca, our summer student, she provided some information that was going to be helpful to look at what we can do for next year. Jane, the previous presenter, noted the Canada Day run. Leslie, one of the committee members, provided an update for that as well. So certainly some good turnout for that. They had 28 registered for the 5K run, 8 registered for the 1K run, and of course it was free. And as was pointed out, they're certainly looking forward to putting it together for next year, and looking potentially for a small budget to get it going as well. And some money raised for the Madawaska Halls was mentioned. Some other updates, pickleball in the arena here in Calabogie. I'm not too sure, maybe Renee, you can add to this, but the lines are going to be repainted, allowing for more courts. So initially it was just painted for 1 court, and we determined that it could hold as many as 4. So that's going to be redone as well. The equipment that we determined we had, there was some challenges with that, so we're going to be relooking at that, determining certainly what we have, but also how to maintain it and keep it available so that we can reuse it as we go. And we also started looking at the 2024-25 priorities, which will be looked again at the next meeting. And just on that, as you pointed out, Rob, we're looking for another member to join the committee, as one member stepped down. So that has been posted on the website, and so hopefully we can get an additional person to add to that. And the last but not least, during our last meeting, we talked about a Greater Madawaska showcase, which would be for events and items that and even businesses that participate with activity-based items. So as an example, those businesses that promote activities within and throughout the township would be invited to participate in this showcase, which would also have some entertainment. So that's slated for October 12th of this year, and plans are already underway for that to go on. So that was a new item that came up, and we had that discussion with the township staff, and everybody's on board, and we're looking forward to getting that together.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from council? Councillor Popke.
I was talking to someone the other day, and they got asking me about the volleyball nets at Burnett Park. Are they for public use?
Yeah.
And if they are, when do they take those down? Like, are they up there right through to the fall?
Maybe.
We can gather that from the facilities manager and get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah. But usually in the fall, they are taken down, though, late fall. I don't know what the exact dates they work on, but yeah. So they are public use for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Thompson.
Just as with the Canada Day Committee, I'm glad that there's one recreation committee. It seems to be for the whole township, which seems to be working really well. There's one thing as a library board member, I've been having trouble getting there. I'm hoping the recreation committee might be able to help. I've been having trouble getting the library to extend their cultural activities to the west end of the township. It could be a staffing issue. The library people work quite hard as it is and do a lot of extras. So I'm just wondering, there is a library board member who is also on the recreation committee, and I was hoping that might be the link, but I think we might need something more formal, because before I knew it as a library board member, the library had already made an association with an arts thing, the Lanark something, I can't remember what it is, and they just did it in Calabogie, and it's like, help me, that's all I can say. Because there are some really good programs already going on, they're just not going on everywhere. And there's also, and one thing I heard from the librarian, there is this misconception that nobody lives in Madawaska, so if they're having trouble getting people here to Calabogie for an event, then, but, it's just the structure that most people are out at the lakes and not on the road, and it's not a huge village. But anyhow, that is something that needs to be considered. Thank you. Anyhow, good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Sorry, the October 12th showcase, where will that take place? In Calabogie?
The community center here in Calabogie.
Okay. Perfect. And back to the run at Madawaska. The organizer, they had actual race, like marathon time clocks there. It was done up well. They had water stations there. It was set up like it was a pro race. And we had people there that were cottagers and some who had run marathons, and they said, this is absolutely amazing that the way this is organized. They had unique little medals for everybody that participated, and they were wood, and it with the Madawaska fun run on it, and it was just extremely well done, and I recommend getting out there, even if you're not going to run, just get out there, work at at the water station or anything, and but yeah, it was a good day. So thank you.
I'd just like to add to that, and the fire department was there, so the starting horn was from the fire department.
I'm sorry, what was that noise?
Just to add one point, these are mostly a lot of stuff that people looked at for the survey, with a lot of program type events or activities, and of course recreation is the big focus, but cultural is something certainly we want to spend more time and focus on. But if you look at the things that happen throughout the township during the summer, I don't know what's typical, but I'm just becoming more and more aware of events and things going on throughout the township, and there's a lot going on at any given time, and for all ages. So, everything from the kids at the beach, just everyday swimming, to you name it. And I think there's a lot of involvement from a lot of people, not just the tourists, but local people as well. So,
thank you. If there's no other questions, comments, concerns, we will move on to section 9.1, infectious disease water surveillance and modern case and contact management software. Resolution, please.
That council supports the request for continued provincial funding and support for cross-provincial infectious disease wastewater surveillance and modernized case and contact management software as per Peterborough Public Health's letter dated June 20th, 2024 regarding continued provincial coordination and support of wastewater surveillance, and as per Renfrew County and District Health Unit's letter dated July 24th, 2024 regarding continued support for infectious disease wastewater surveillance and modern case and contact management software, and that this resolution be forwarded to the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honorable Sylvia Jones, Deputy Premier and Minister of Health, Government of Ontario, and the Honorable Andrea Kanjan, Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Government of Ontario.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Tripp. Not too much background then, other than did we all get a chance to read it? It's quite lengthy, but I'm going to I'll put it in a nutshell is when with COVID and other infectious diseases, wastewater testing gives a great indication for medical personnel to see if there's a trend going up in certain diseases or even the opioid uses as well. So right now that was funded by the provincial government and they're taking that away. So we're going to lose an extremely valuable tool if that happens. So we're trying to impress upon them that this is a fabulous resource, a fabulous tool that was used to help us get through things, and it should not be left on the wayside. Is there any questions? Councillor Popke.
This is, I guess, a related topic on that issue. Can we do something about spraying pesticides into the water? Or is that something to talk about, like, separate?
That would be a separate to this at this time, but this
Okay.
is more of showing, this is a letter of support asking them not to stop the medical
Okay.
testing of the water. Thank you. Any other questions? All in favor to support this? That is unanimous, so carried. Prior to moving into a closed session, should we take a 5-minute break? Pardon me? Okay, we can vote to go into closed first, and then we can.
No.
Or am I missing something? That's what I said. Yes, okay, let's go into closed first.
That the council meeting of August 15th, 2024 enter into closed session at 4:49 PM pursuant to section 293(2) of the Municipal Act regarding 1, litigation and potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically a causeway easement.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Thompson. All in favor to move into close? Moving into closed. We will now move 11.1, move to open. Resolution, please.
That the council meeting of August 15, 2024 move back into open session at 5:03 p.m.
We have a mover. Councillor Tripp, second by Councillor Popkey. All in favor to move to open? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to 12.1, move to rise and report. Resolution, please.
The council reports the following as a result of the closed meeting item. 1, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically a causeway easement, receive as information.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popkey, second by Councillor Levesque. All in favor? So carried. Thank you. 13.1, bylaw approval. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following bylaws, 38-2024 zoning bylaw amendment 2406.1 Hovorka Alcock, 39-2024 development agreement Track Corp Canada Inc., 40-2024 Granite Village Subdivision West Side, 41-2024 Granite Village Subdivision East Side, 42-2024 zoning bylaw amendment CMP Track Corp Canada Inc., 44-2024 agreement with circular materials be deemed read a second and final time and passed by council, and furthermore that 43-2024 confirmatory be deemed read a first, second, and final time and passed by council at the regular council meeting held August 15th, 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Levesque. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Motion to adjourn. Resolution, please.
That the regular council meeting of August 15th, 2024 be adjourned at 5:04 PM.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson. Second, Councillor Popke. All in favor to adjourn? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.